I always felt connected to the rhythms of rural life. The changing seasons, the smell of freshly tilled soil, and the hum of the tractor were constants for me. But as I got older, I became curious about the world beyond our farm. Stories of distant cities and foreign lands sparked a desire for more than our small town could offer. Our life was simple, rooted in hard work. We weren't struggling, but luxury was a foreign concept. My parents were content, but I dreamed of exploring the world. I knew I needed to make a bold move to break free from the farm. Growing up on a farm taught me that if I wanted more than occasional trips to the local store, I'd have to take drastic action. We weren't destitute, but far from comfortable. By age 7, I was already hauling and stacking hay bales. After high school, despite my parents' wishes, my best friend Hal and I enlisted in the Marines. We spent 4 years stationed in South Korea and Japan. Though we were advised to stick to American-friendly spots, Hal and I explored as much as we could, knowing this might be our only chance to see the world. I spent half my money on fun and sent the rest home. Our service was mostly uneventful, filled with sentry duty and occasional misadventures. By the time we were discharged, everyone called me Army instead of Calvin Bostic, a nickname that stuck when I returned home, though people misunderstood its origin. Back in Belford, job options were limited to farming and construction. I chose construction, working hard all day and still having energy to hang out with friends in the evenings. I met Stacy at Higgins' restaurant, and it was love at first sight. After many attempts, she finally agreed to go out with me, and we got married 9 months later. At 24, Stacy and I were happy, but knew we needed to save money before starting a family. My dad advised me to seek better job opportunities, and he was right. We could barely cover our expenses. After 2 years of marriage, we had little savings and lived paycheck to paycheck. The nearby cities of Somerville and Kensington offered more job opportunities, and we hoped to improve our situation one day. One afternoon, Stacy excitedly shared news about a new gym opening in Kensington with better pay. She was eager to apply and hoped the job would help us save for a family. After a successful interview, Stacy started working at Stokes Fitness Palace. Initially, she dressed conservatively, but over time, her outfits became more revealing, which made me uncomfortable. However, when I visited the gym, I saw that her co-workers dressed similarly, which eased my concerns. Her job seemed to boost her confidence, and her libido increased, leading to wild nights together. She credited her workouts and healthier lifestyle for the change, and I was happy with the new energy in our relationship. One Friday, Stacy mentioned a promotion at the gym and asked me to attend a special event for spouses. Though I was skeptical, I agreed to go. On the night of the event, I felt uneasy, so I brought Hal along. He lent me a spy pen that could record audio just in case. When we arrived at the gym, Hal wasn't allowed in at first, but I insisted, and we both entered after handing over our phones. Inside, Stacy looked nervous, standing next to her supervisor, Gerald Goliath Jenkins. She was dressed in a skimpy bikini, which shocked me. When I asked what was going on, Goliath smugly explained that he had set up an arm wrestling contest, where the winner would get both a cash prize and a night with Stacy. Though she initially resisted, the money tempted her, and she eventually agreed. Goliath revealed his plan to erase my memory with ketamine after I lost, so I wouldn't remember any of it. Stacy would get the money, and we'd continue our lives as if nothing happened. I realized Goliath had made several mistakes, including underestimating the loyalty of his accomplices and assuming I wouldn't notice being pilled. I knew I had to stay calm and think through my next move. One of the goons claimed to know the right dose to knock me out, but I was done playing along. Forget it. I'm not competing. If Stacy's considering this, she's yours. Do whatever you want with her. I'm leaving, I said coldly. Goliath responded, "You can't leave, Army. A deal's a deal. I promised Stacy you'd compete and forget everything. I don't care anymore. I just want a divorce." Stacy started sobbing at my words. Ignoring her, I added, "If you want me to compete, you'll have to liquidate me afterward." Goliath dismissed my threat, saying, "Let's get started." They marched me into the gym, where the men cheered and catcalled at Stacy's nearly undressed body. I looked for Hal, but he was gone. "Where's Hal?" I asked. "He left on his own," one of the guys lied. I knew Hal wouldn't abandon me willingly, so I figured he was nearby. I needed help, fast. Goliath, hiding his muscles under a light jacket, addressed the crowd, keeping their hopes high. "All right, everyone, this is what we've been waiting for. All 40 of us paid our entry fees and signed the waivers. Stokes Fitness Palace isn't responsible for any injuries. It's a double elimination tournament. Lose twice. And you're out," he continued. "Stacy insisted her husband, Army, gets a shot too. He'll face the top contender. If he loses, the winner takes everything. Agreed? The men nodded. Great, Goliath said. The winner gets $20,000, a trophy, and a night with Stacy. You've all seen her video. The winner's in for the night of his life. The crowd cheered as Stacy flirted with them. Goliath added, We have official referees from the World Arm Wrestling Federation. Their decisions are final. The matches began, with 2 contests at a time. The gym filled with cheers and groans as the men competed fiercely. I sat in the middle, disgusted, watching my wife allow other men to touch her. Anger boiled inside me. After an hour and a half, the field narrowed to 10 finalists. One of the goons snarled, You just had to open your mouth. After this, I'm going to knock you up and say you fell down the steps. In the semifinals, Goliath easily won, setting up the final match between him and me. He refused to break, confident I was no challenge. I removed my windbreaker, tied it around my waist, and approached the table. The room went quiet. No one believed I had a chance. They already assumed Stacy would be Goliath's prize. I asked, Where's the $40,000 prize money? I want to see it. Goliath taunted, Why do you care? You're not going to win. I still want to see it, I replied. The goons fetched the locked box, and the referees confirmed the money was there. I asked referee Justin Albright to hold on to it and ensure I could leave alive. Goliath smirked. You'll leave, don't worry. His look told me otherwise. I suspected his goons were waiting outside for me. Satisfied, I said, I'm only here for the money. I don't care about her anymore. I'm tempted to leave her here, win or lose. Stacy shot me a furious look. Enough talk. Let's get this over with, Goliath said. Stacy kissed him passionately, fueling my anger. When she tried to kiss me, I stopped her. Don't touch me, Stacy. You're nothing but a cheating witch. If I had my way, I'd divorce you right now. Get behind me. I can't stand the sight of you. Stacy started crying as the crowd gasped. The referees seemed uneasy, and I hoped they realized I wasn't here by choice. Goliath challenged me. Put your arm up, and let's see who's the real man. The room erupted in support for Goliath. I reluctantly placed my arm on the table, locking hands with Goliath. Referee Kevin Saunders reviewed the rules, and the match began. I pushed with all my strength, but our hands didn't move. Goliath grinned and slowly forced my hand down, winning the first round as the crowd cheered. Taking a deep breath, I reminded everyone, best 2 out of 3, and prepared for the next round. Goliath laughed, confident in his victory. You don't stand a chance. The room cheered for him, fueling my anger even more. Kevin repeated the instructions, and we started again. Goliath smiled, sure of his victory. I used every ounce of strength and leverage, but after about 10 seconds, Goliath's strength wavered. My arm locked in place, and I pushed back with everything I had. The crowd went silent as I slowly forced his hand down. When the referee called the match in my favor, the room fell into stunned silence. Goliath jumped back in disbelief. No way! That was a fluke! I'm going to crush you now, he shouted, tearing off his jacket and ripping his shirt to show off his muscles. He slammed his elbow on the table, ready for the final match. I ignored his theatrics, focusing on my breathing to stay calm. Kevin signaled the start, and Goliath threw all his strength into the first push, nearly pinning me. My hand shook, but I held on, waiting for him to tire. Then Stacy's voice called out, Come on, Goliath! Finish him so I can have you! Her words enraged me, giving me a new surge of energy. I pushed back, slowly turning the match in my favor. With one final effort, I slammed Goliath's hand onto the padded mat, and the referee declared my victory. I had defeated him 2 out of 3. The room was stunned. Goliath, in disbelief, asked, How did you do that? I'll explain if you meet 2 conditions, I replied. First, give me the $40,000. Second, let me leave here undamaged. Goliath agreed, and Justin handed me the money, which I zipped into my windbreaker. I addressed the crowd. I've won fair and square. Whether you like it or not, I'm not to be touched. Goliath confirmed this, though I suspected his goons were waiting for me outside. I explained, I've worked on farms and in construction all my life, building strength and endurance. In the Marines, I arm wrestled regularly and never lost. My muscles aren't built for short bursts of strength like Goliath's. They're built for endurance. That's how I knock 'em. Now, I'll take my leave. I retrieved my phone and started toward the door, the crowd still in shock. Stacy called out, offering to drive us home and talk, but I responded, I'll wait outside. Go put some clothes on. She saw it as a chance to talk, but I intended it as a way to buy time to escape. As I reached the front door, I saw Hal's car. He flashed his lights, confirming he was ready. Just then, 3 of Goliath's goons appeared from behind an SUV and started running toward me. But Marines are trained to run, and I outran them, diving into Hal's car. Hal didn't wait. He peeled out, leaving the scene with tires screeching. I managed to escape with my memories intact. "I didn't abandon you in there, Army," Hal quickly assured me. "Some big guys forced me out and tossed my phone on the ground. They said it was a closed event and I wasn't invited, so I waited. I was about to call the police, but since no one else came out, I figured you were okay. But seeing those guys chasing you didn't look friendly. What happened and where do you want to go?" he asked. "Take me to my place," I said. On the way, I told him everything. Hal was shocked and couldn't believe Stacy's betrayal, especially with the pilling plan. He shook his head in disbelief. "What do you want to do?" Hal asked as we pulled up to my place. "Park behind the building. Stacy will probably show up soon. If she's alone, I'll talk to her while I pack. Can I crash at your place for a few days?" "Of course. I only have a couch, but it's yours," Hal replied. "The couch is fine. If she brings any of those thugs, I'll slip out the back and head to your place." "Wait, I have an idea." I took the cash and hid it in an empty fast food bag, which we stashed under Hal's spare tire. "I might need backup. Got your weapon?" "Always," Hal said, showing me his pistol. He tucked it into his waistband and followed me inside. I was nearly done packing when we heard the front door unlock. Hal hid in the closet as Stacy rushed in. "Thank God you're here. I was so worried you'd be gone. We need to talk," she said, sounding remorseful. "Are you alone, or are the guys you hooked up with earlier nearby?" I asked. "It's just me," she winced. "I'm sorry for what happened tonight. I got caught up in everything. I was supposed to excite the guys and I went too far." I smiled sarcastically. "Why bother? They'd already paid. It's not like you'd get more out of them." Stacy tried to justify her actions, claiming she was playing both sides, hoping we'd get the money no matter what. She praised my win and said she was happy to be with me instead of someone else. "That's not how I remember it, Stacy. I heard you cheering for Goliath, telling him to finish me off so you could have him," I replied. She looked down but insisted she wanted to build a family with me. "This was just a one-time thing for the money." Goliath was sure I wouldn't remember anything. "But even if I forgot, you'd still be a cheater, Stacy. You were okay with having me pilled and held against my will. You betrayed me. That's unforgivable. We're done." She started sobbing. "No, you don't mean that. We belong together." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Why don't you see who it is?" Stacy suggested sweetly. "I don't care who it is," I said, suspecting it was the thugs. Stacy grabbed my phone and left the room. As soon as she opened the door, she let in Goliath and the 5 goons. "I have his phone, so he's not recording anything," she said. Little did she know I had already activated the recording device. She continued, "Just hold him down, get the pills into him, and make it look like a mugging." "What is this? Get out of my house!" I shouted. "I'm sorry, honey, but I can't let you remember tonight. It'll be easier if you just drink the stuff and go to sleep. If not, they'll force it down your throat and rough you up," she admitted. "You didn't plan on this," I said, as I pulled out my Glock 17. "Now sit down. I don't want to shoot anyone, but if I have to, I'll strike 3 of you before the rest decide what to do." They froze, clearly not expecting me to be armed. Goliath sneered. "You wouldn't shoot. We'd still get you." "Want to bet?" I replied calmly. "I'm a Marine, trained to shoot. If anyone makes a move, I'll put a bullet in 3 of you. Now sit down." One of the goons hesitated, but finally said, "Why should we? We still have a chance." "You have no chance," I replied. "If you want to talk, sit. Otherwise, I'll call the police. It's your choice." They sat down as I instructed, sliding back on the sofa and chairs to make it harder for them to get up. I positioned myself against the opposite wall, sitting in a kitchen chair with my pistol resting on my thigh. My finger hovered just outside the trigger guard, ready to act. "Look, sweetheart," Stacy said, "just give them the $20,000 and take the ketamine. Tomorrow, we'll wake up $20,000 richer, like nothing happened." I asked how she'd explain the money to me. "Simple," she replied. "You won $40,000 and gave me $20,000 to hold. Then you got mugged on the way home. They might have to rough you up a bit to make it look real, but you'd wake up as my loving husband, and we'd have a bright future." I started laughing, which made the men uneasy. Stacy looked puzzled and began to stand. "Grab his weapon," Goliath urged. "He won't hurt you. He loves you." "He's half right," I said. "I used to love you, but if you stand up, I'll shoot 3 of these guys." She sat back down, shocked. "You're so stupid, Stacy. You fell for Goliath's lie that I'd wake up with no memory and believe whatever story you told me. But you were never going to see a dime of that money. They planned to pill me and have their way with you. They'd record everything and use it to blackmail you into doing whatever they wanted. This was never a one-time deal. Stacy tried to deny it, saying the guys were happy with what they got earlier, but I pointed out the video she made, which could easily spread and ruin her reputation. Now, whose idea was it to invite me tonight? I asked. Stacy admitted it was Goliath's idea. He wanted to humiliate me, not just by screwing her, but by making me watch. He wanted control, to keep me from interfering and calling the police. And once they had their blackmail material, they'd own her. You were never going to get that money, Stacy. They'd make sure of it, they'd use you whenever they wanted, and you'd be stuck. Stacy finally began to realize she'd been duped. She admitted to agreeing to sleep with Goliath, but not the others. I laughed at her naivety. You really think they'd go to all this trouble and not take turns? They'd get what they wanted, and you'd end up with nothing but a blackmail video. And even if you got the money, they'd make sure you paid for it. At the gym, they'd stage my injuries to look like an accident. But here at home, they'd make it look like a real mugging. They'd knock me senseless, maybe even break some bones. You wouldn't have the money to cover the medical bills because you were never going to get it. And if you did, Goliath would just use that as leverage to control you further. And let's be real, Stacy. You'd never go off birth control because you'd be too scared of getting pregnant with one of their kids, not mine. She sat there, finally understanding the mess she was in. I had figured it all out and made it clear I was done with her and her lies. Stacy stared at me in shock. Let me point out another flaw in your plan, I said. You wanted to say I got mugged after giving you $20,000, but there are 42 witnesses, including the referees, who saw me leave with all the cash. No mugger would have left any of it behind. Your story wouldn't hold up. They'd take every cent. How'd an uneducated jarhead outsmart us? Goliath grumbled. Stacy looked horrified, realizing how badly she'd been played. Just because I don't have a degree doesn't mean I'm stupid, I replied. In the Marines, I was trained to think through situations. Earlier tonight, I knew those 5 guys were over liquidation. You claiming to control them because they couldn't take you is ridiculous. You can't control what they do on their own. I bet you're all buddies, but this wasn't just about money. The split would be small, so why risk everything? No, the reward had to be worth it. I'm guessing you told your buddies about Stacy, and they helped you with this plan. Suddenly, Goliath grabbed Stacy and pulled her in front of him. Drop the weapon or I'll snap her neck, he threatened. I'm not going to shoot you, Goliath, but I will shoot 3 of these guys if you hurt her. Eliminating her just gives me more reason to act, I said, raising my Glock. Now, let her go. One of the goons spoke up. Jerry, let her go. This guy isn't bluffing. He'll shoot us. Goliath hesitated, then released Stacy. The goon continued. Look, you're not going to shoot anyone. You don't want prison, and you're not going to call the cops either. Why wouldn't I asked. He explained. We've got 42 witnesses who saw your wife acting like a witch. They think you were in on it, pimping her out. You can deny it, but it'll look like you just got jealous. We might have threatened to rough you up, but liquidation? No way. That's how it'll play out. You can't prove otherwise. Goliath let go of Stacy, who looked at him with a mix of fear and anger. The goon continued. We'd be caught with ketamine and a video camera, sure, but we're vets. We have a plausible reason for everything. Stacy won't report us because she's got no proof. Meanwhile, everyone saw her behavior tonight. She made that video, and you might not want that coming out in a small town. Goliath growled, I need that money. I just bought a new truck. The smarter goon cut in. Forget it. You lost the contest. Splitting the remaining money 5 ways isn't worth the risk. Stacy was the real prize, and we planned to keep her for ourselves. We weren't going to turn her into a promiscuous immediately. We had more events planned with her as the prize. Eventually, we might let her have a kid, but only after she was thoroughly ours. We'd even give her some money back to keep her happy. But now it's over. We're leaving. The man next to the leader spoke up. We'll leave, and you two can sort things out. But honestly, I doubt counseling will help. You'll never truly forget or forgive. Still, I have a suggestion. I can give you some ketamine, a good dose that, with a few drinks, should erase your memory. We planned on giving you about 6 shots of booze. If you love Stacy, you could take it after we're gone. She won't be working at the gym anymore, so she's safe from us. Hopefully, she's learned her lesson about being gullible and the risks of cheating. I was amused by how quickly they were trying to salvage their plan. You think I'd actually do that? I asked. The man continued. It'd be like giving her a second chance. She could explain the money truthfully. You won it in an arm wrestling contest. Most competitors don't live locally, so it's unlikely you'd ever run into one again. If you did, they might mention your hot wife, but probably not her behavior. I pretended to consider his point, but questioned how she'd explain my memory loss. That's tricky, he admitted. She'd have to make it look like you fell and strike your head after drinking. You might decide to get checked out at a hospital, so you'd need a solid story. But you'd still be married, and love can make you trust her explanation. The men chuckled at that, clearly trying to convince me. I suspected they were already thinking of ways to come back for the money. I let him continue. You'd have to take the ketamine tonight, though, to ensure it erases enough memory. You might remember going to the gym, but not what happened there. That gives Stacy the chance to fill in the blanks. I then raised the real issue. What to do about Stacy? I could just divorce her and move on. That seems like the smartest choice, I mused aloud. Stacy began begging, promising she'd never do anything like this again. But you still cheated, I replied. And taking ketamine after you guys leave raises another problem. What if you come back and blackmail Stacy for the money? You could create doubt and tear us apart. The men all shook their heads, including Stacy. I demanded each of them verbally promise they wouldn't bother us again, which they did, piling on assurances as if I was about to let them go. The big problem is, Stacy would have to hurt me enough to cover the amnesia, I continued. She'd need to make it look like a real fall. Could you do that, Stacy? Oh yes, I'd make it convincing, she said eagerly. A few kicks to the head and ribs, maybe even stage a mugging. We could say we went out to celebrate and you got jumped. I could claim I ran for help and when I came back they were gone. I'd bring you home and kick you here to make it look real. I'd use your heavy boots and leave some bruises, maybe kick you in the balls a few times. Just enough to hurt but not do serious damage. I couldn't believe how quickly she got on board with hurting me. The 6 men stared at her in disbelief. And tomorrow I'd take care of you, bringing you ice packs for your head and balls, she added, almost gushing. We'd save our marriage, have money for a baby, and I promise I won't cheat again. That includes making out or letting anyone feel me up. I noticed she only said that because I called it cheating. She still didn't fully agree. I asked her calmly, You really wanted to have sex with Goliath, didn't you? You'd be thinking of that when you kicked me. Okay, I won't lie, she admitted. Yes, I was excited about screwing him. I felt his excitement and wanted it. It would have been wild. But now I'm mad at both of you. You for figuring it out and him for planning it. I'd like to kick you both in the nuts. Maybe that could be a condition for letting them go. I get to kick Goliath a couple of times too. Goliath bristled. Screw that, I'm being honest here. You won't remember this anyway, and you won't remember the other stuff either. Stacy's flushed face showed she'd remember everything and enjoy the memory, even if she missed out on actually being with Goliath. She seemed eager to hurt me, just as she had been ready to break my heart earlier, as long as I wouldn't remember any of it. Since we're being honest, I have a few more questions before deciding whether to let you go or let Stacy erase my memory, I said. Both Stacy and Goliath nodded eagerly. You both claimed you never actually slept together and were candid because you thought you'd erase my memory. Stacy even asked that I get a chance to win the prize, though she didn't think I'd succeed. But tell me, did you plan to make me watch before pilling me? You've hinted at it both ways. I already suspected the truth and confirmed it when they responded. Yeah, we thought it'd be thrilling to make you watch, Goliath admitted. Stacy liked the idea of having that kind of power over you. The word power stood out, especially considering how much Stacy seemed to relish the thought of hurting me after I passed out, or maybe even while I was still conscious, just to hear me scream. It wasn't just me, Stacy protested, still not realizing what she was saying. Goliath said it'd be hot if you cried while watching him be a better man. I then asked who suggested it first. Goliath quickly replied, I did, but Stacy added ideas to make it wilder. I followed up with another question. You said she gave you all heads this afternoon as payment for your help. Is that true? One of the men confirmed it. Yeah, she agreed to it to show she was on board and to pay us since we couldn't compete for her. I nodded, hiding my emotions. By then, I just wanted answers. All 5 men admitted she'd done it, each providing details. Stacy then said, Let's let them go and take care of your memory. We can reset our marriage, and I promise I won't be tempted again. I barely kept a straight face. Yeah, after you enjoy stomping my nuts, I said sarcastically. Oh no, I won't enjoy it. I'll just do enough to make it look real, she contradicted herself. I asked the men if they planned to double back for the money, and Stacy after I was out. and they all denied it, trying to convince me. I pulled out a second cell phone, raising my Glock to remind them I was serious. These guys aren't going anywhere far. They'll give us just enough time for me to take the ketamine and maybe stage the mugging. Then they'd come back for the money and you, Stacy. Stacy looked shocked. You'd be dumb enough to tell them I'd taken the pill and they'd return to finish the job, I said. She asked what their plan was. They already have enough blackmail material on you. Do you really think they didn't record everything? They'd come back, take the money, and force you into their plan again? I could have pretended to take the ketamine, waited for them to return, and caught them red-handed. But that would have been risky. Goliath ranted about how a dumb Marine outsmarted them. I asked where the video was, and the veterinarian admitted it was in his case by the door. Stacy retrieved the camera and tossed me the SD card, but I confirmed the footage was also saved on the camera's hard drive. I told them I didn't care about the video and let Stacy decide what to do with it. If you let them blackmail you, that's on you, I said. I had bigger concerns, like the recording I had been making since the beginning. Just then, the emergency operator's voice came through. What is the nature of your emergency? I gave my name and address to the emergency operator and reported, I have 6 men my wife invited to our home to attack and rob me. I'm holding them at under pressure and need officers dispatched. No ambulance is needed yet, but it might be if one of them tries anything. All 6 men glared at me. What the hell? We were ready to leave. You even talked about fixing things with your wife. We gave you the camera. You could have deleted all the evidence. We'd have no blackmail material left, the veterinarian protested. Stacy looked shocked. Well, my marriage is ruined because of you guys, so I'm returning the favor. Now you can explain to your wives why you got arrested and see if they believe you. I doubt they're as gullible as mine. 3 of the men shifted in their seats. I raised the Glock, making sure they saw my finger on the trigger. I wouldn't try it. This trigger is sensitive and takes less than 2 pounds of pressure to fire. And Stacy, I told you I'd never trust you again. You seemed too eager to fake a mugging by stomping my nuts. I called out for Hal, who stepped out from around the corner. This is his phone, I said, holding up the phone I used to keep the emergency call active. Everything's been recorded and the pin recorder is back up. One of the men yelled, "That's hearsay." I shrugged. It'll still be part of the statement, and whether it's allowed in court or not, your wives might not like what they hear. I kept the weapon moving between them, knowing they were close to making a move. Hal, go outside and inform the police. I'll put the weapon down when they enter. When the officers arrive, they'll take us all in. You weren't involved, so secure everything for me, okay? I said, handing him the SD card from the camera. Got it, Hal replied. I'll come down to the station after locking up. We heard sirens as police cars approached. The emergency operator confirmed. Officers are on location. I instructed, my friend is at the door and it's unlocked. I'm sitting in the room with the pistol held by the barrel. The first officer through the door was Hal's older brother, Bob, a police lieutenant. What's going on here? Army, put the weapon down and step away. I complied, noting his body cam was running. Well, it seems my wife cheated on me, gave these guys heads earlier and planned to sleep with this one, I said, pointing at Goliath. They threatened to pill me with ketamine and booze. When that plan failed, they came here for a second chance. My wife let them in and gave them my phone so I couldn't record anything. It's in his shirt pocket, I added, nodding at Goliath. That phone should show their intentions. Goliath quickly countered. Ridiculous. We drove Stacy here after her husband left her in Kensington following his arm wrestling win. She invited us to celebrate. He's delusional. He told contestants he feared for his life. I suggested taking us all to the station to give statements and make a public record. Bob cut me off, saying he knew what to do. Soon, everyone but Hal was in handcuffs and loaded into police cars. Hal told Bob he'd secure the house and then come to the station. I knew he'd upload copies of the recordings as planned. At the station, I explained what happened and what I suspected their plan was. I advised Bob to check the case left at my house for ketamine and the camera with the video of Stacy. Bob offered me coffee and then began taking the other's statements. Later, Bob returned. Army, these guys are all telling the same story, that you're crazy. They claim you won the arm wrestling competition and then held them at under pressure after Stacy invited them over. One of them is a lawyer and wants to represent the others, but since he's also a suspect, he can't. They're all writing statements. Do you have any proof? I can't open the files on that camera without a warrant, but I did impound it. I told Bob that Hal had an audio recording of their confessions and was making copies. This changed everything immediately. As soon as Stacy heard about the recording, she broke down and changed her story, claiming she was seduced and blackmailed into cheating by the guys. An officer accompanied Hal and me back to my house with my permission, so no warrant was needed. They secured a small case one of the men had left at the door. Inside, along with the camera Stacy had removed earlier, were 2 bottles of liquor, ketamine, large tubes of lubricant, and some flexible hoses. The video downloaded from the camera clearly showed my soon-to-be ex-wife happily engaging with all 5 men in Goliath, talking about how much she loved the thrill and how she couldn't wait to be with Goliath after he won the contest. Bob might have pushed the limits, but he let me watch the video at the station. By then, I had my own copy to watch later. With enough evidence, Stacy, Goliath, and the 5 men were kept in jail until their arraignment on Monday. I kept the SD card hidden. Bob told Hal and me to stick around, but I decided to leave town. Early Sunday morning, I bought 2 cheap round-trip tickets to Las Vegas for Hal and me. We spent the day collecting discarded sports betting slips, amassing nearly $40,000 worth, planning to claim I'd lost most of the money. Hal and I had a wild time in Vegas, taking photos at strip clubs and posing with liquor bottles to create a story about spending our winnings on a good time. We even made donations to a children's cancer hospital, wearing the sweatshirts they gave us for our contributions. On Monday, I ignored a barrage of calls, suspecting some were from Stacy's parents. Bob eventually texted, demanding I call him back. When I did, he wasn't pleased, but told us to get back home. When we returned, Bob gave us an official reprimand as he took us to the district attorney's office. We claimed we didn't realize we had to stay in town and thought close meant anywhere in the continental U.S. Bob and the DA weren't happy with our explanation. The DA asked me to go over the events again. My story matched the audio recording perfectly, and I was more determined than ever to divorce Stacy. I visited a lawyer, Mr. Price, who advised me that the divorce would cost around $2,000, but was the least of my worries. He told me not to stress about hiding the money since I didn't have much left, and that the criminal charges against Stacy and the men were more important. On Tuesday, I found a new apartment close to work. Though my parents would have taken me in, I preferred to stay independent and away from Stacy. By then, rumors had spread in our small town. The story was that Stacy had an affair with her boss, who came to my house to confront me, and I held him at under pressure until the police arrived. After Stacy refused to move back in with her parents, I moved out. Following my lawyer's advice, I kept the true story quiet, holding onto the audio recordings as leverage. On Wednesday, I started receiving more calls from unknown numbers. The 4th was from Gloria Jenkins, Goliath's wife, who texted, asking me to call her. Curious, I did. She picked up immediately and told me her husband claimed everything was a misunderstanding. She wanted to meet in person, so I drove to Kensington, bringing Hal's recording pin just in case. At the cafe, Gloria introduced herself. She was a stunning woman, blonde and in her late 20s. Despite her calm exterior, I could sense her anxiety. I wasn't sure if she was a sufferer or in on the scheme with her husband, so I stayed cautious. She explained that all she knew was her husband and his friends had been arrested after an incident at my home, and she suspected she wasn't getting the full story. She asked me to explain what had happened. Realizing she and the other wives deserved to know the truth, I suggested inviting them over. I pointed out the 3 women sitting across the cafe who had been watching us since I arrived. Gloria seemed impressed by my observation and invited the women over. After introductions, one of them nervously asked, "Is it as bad as we imagined?" I replied, "Maybe not for you, but for me. It's the end of my marriage." Goliath had been trying to seduce my wife for a while. He succeeded in everything but actual sex, and he and his friends planned to blackmail her into being available to them in the future. I watched their expression shift from disbelief to anger and back to shock, with muttered curses all around. "No wonder the cops held them so long," Gloria said. "They got out this morning and have been with their lawyer since. I assume you have proof, even though the guys claim you don't." I pulled out a flash drive. "I have hours of audio recordings, pretty damning stuff. There's some irrelevant chatter in the middle, but I can summarize it and then you can listen." One of the women shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe how dumb your wife is. A head isn't cheating? Seriously? And to make a video of herself knowing it would be sent to strangers?" Another added. "She thought it was okay to cheat as long as you didn't remember because of the pills?" Someone muttered. I nodded, noticing how the women weren't shocked by their husband's behavior. "Why would I be?" one woman said. "My husband's an egotistical idiot. My mom warned me he'd cheat eventually. When we heard about an angry husband with a weapon..." We figured it was something like this, but this is worse than we imagined. Gloria suggested, "Let's go to my office. We can listen to the recording there." She explained she worked in investments and had a nearby office. They listened to the recording, fast-forwarding through the arm wrestling competition. By the end, they were almost as angry as I was. One woman joked, "Teach me how to bite it off if he tries that crap again." The others laughed, and they all made quick phone calls, none lasting more than a minute. Gloria explained that the 6 men had been tight-knit friends since high school, bonding over bodybuilding. They chased girls but were disciplined, charming, and stuck together more than with their wives. "We girls get along because of them, but our marriages aren't great. We're like satellites around their bromance." Later, when the others had left, Gloria asked me, "Army, you're clearly smart. Why are you working such a low-income job?" I shrugged and explained, "After I left the military, I wanted to stay close to my parents." "Do they need constant help?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, they actually told me I didn't need to stay so close, but I got complacent. It was home. Hal's in a similar situation. His brother's a senior police officer, but he works a low-stress job too." I continued, "While overseas, I read a lot, mystery stories mostly. It kept my mind sharp." Gloria laughed, and I found myself liking her laugh more than I should have. I quickly excused myself, feeling guilty. "You can call me anytime," I told her, though I wasn't sure I should admit how much I looked forward to it. After several calls, texts, and voicemails, Stacy finally tracked me down, pleading to talk. "All right, Stacy, what makes you think there's a misunderstanding? And why do you think there's any chance of saving our marriage?" She looked startled. "You made it clear on Saturday night. You didn't think what you did was wrong. Flirting, making out, letting another man touch you wasn't cheating? Even what you did with those men wasn't cheating as long as I didn't know?" Stacy babbled, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just got caught up in the excitement with Goliath." "So the next time a hot guy comes along, you might get caught up again?" I asked sarcastically. "And you thought it was okay to humiliate me, wipe my memory, and then everything would be fine?" I surprised myself by staying calm. I wasn't angry, just indignant. Stacy ran through her excuses and finally admitted, "I was wrong, but I want you, Army. I want to have your babies. It was just fun, and I didn't think you'd ever know." "But you would know," I pointed out. "You'd remember and think you got away with it." She suggested counseling, but I wasn't convinced. "Do you want to listen to a recording of what you said Saturday night? If you still think it was acceptable, then we can talk." I had no intention of fixing our marriage, but I wanted her to confront the reality of her actions. The following Saturday, Gloria invited me to a dinner party with the other wives and girlfriends. I wanted to see Gloria, but wasn't entirely trusting, so I carried a small pistol. "I'm glad you came, Army," Gloria said warmly. "I was hoping you'd trust me, but I understand being cautious. You're smart to be prepared." The women discussed their husbands' weak excuses. None of them seemed that upset about the divorces. One said, "They're more worried about money. We're going after half of everything and won't pay a cent for their legal defense." "My husband downplayed the charges," another added. "But when I quoted the recordings, he panicked. He didn't realize you recorded the whole night." I nodded. "Exposing them was my main goal." Gloria giggled. Jerry's reaction was priceless. "How did a jarhead think to record everything?" One woman added, "It saved me from marrying Andy. I need to look beyond the surface next time." They raised their glasses, cheering in agreement. Gloria seemed to be studying me closely. One of the women asked if I'd talked to Stacy. I admitted I had, curious about her excuses. They guessed I'd recorded it and laughed, saying they'd done the same with their husbands. "Damn, your wife is delusional," one commented after hearing the recording. "She doesn't think what she did was that wrong. She's just mad you found out." Gloria added thoughtfully, "She admits her faults, but still wants a future with you." "If that's love, I'd hate to see her version of hate," another woman quipped. Gloria replied, "She loves him, but doesn't understand that love alone can't fix a marriage. There's so much more needed." She looked at me intently, leaving her statement hanging in the air. I waited until midweek to call Gloria, curious to see how she was doing. I was surprised when she seemed genuinely happy to hear from me, and we decided to meet up that weekend. "I'm really glad you called, Army," she said when we met. "I wanted to call you, but hesitated." That surprised me. "I hope you trust me this time," Gloria added with a grin, then joked, "Maybe I should frisk you." And not just your waistband. I stared at her, caught off guard. We're not kids, she continued. I think we both feel a connection. Of course, we met under the worst circumstances. You're probably wondering what kind of shallow person I am to have fallen for a guy like Jerry. I started to protest, but she kept going. I was in love with the idea of love. Jerry was smart, good-looking, and had the kind of physique that made people admire him. It fed my ego to be the one who won him. My mom warned me he'd break my heart, but I didn't listen. By the time I realized she was right, I was already married. But I'm not a quitter, she added sheepishly. Though this is one time I should have quit. I can see why your wife fell for his charm. He could sell anything. He was great at coaching, always encouraging people. I'd never seen him try to seduce another woman, and I'm not sure he ever cheated on me, though he denies it. My mom wasn't surprised by what happened. She said it was just a matter of time before Jerry stepped out on me. At least we didn't have kids. I'm not sure what Jerry saw in me either, Gloria admitted, blushing. To me, it was obvious. She was smart, compassionate, and incredibly attractive. I'm pushy, maybe too driven. I was raised to always do my best and expect the same from others. My parents didn't have high incomes, but they loved their jobs and raised two well-rounded daughters. They encouraged us to try everything, dance, sports, music, so we could find what we liked. Dad didn't say much when I told him about Jerry. Mom spoke for both of them when we discussed it. She even had a few things to say about you. Me? I was surprised. I've never met her. True, but you're part of the story, Gloria said. Curious, I asked, what did she say? Most of it's between us, but she analyzed you and your wife like I did. And, I prompted, she agrees with me. Stacy loves you, but doesn't respect you. I nodded. Yeah, I've wondered if she even loved me at all. Oh, she loves you. She wants your kids. If she just wanted to cheat, she wouldn't have cared if you found out. She went to great lengths to keep your marriage intact. But part of her thinks you're not good enough for her. She wants the upper hand. That's why she talked about humiliating you after sleeping with Jerry. That's a whole new level of disrespect, and it pisses me off. I laughed. It didn't exactly make me happy either. Gloria's eyes filled with tears. You don't get it. It infuriates me. I want to rip her hair out for what she planned to do to you. She might not respect you, but I do. Taking a deep breath, she continued. From the first moment we met, I respected you. You had the guts to meet Jerry's wife, and you treated me with kindness and respect. I liked that. I liked you. Let me finish, Gloria said, holding up her hand. You remind me of my dad. They say girls marry men like their fathers. I didn't with Jerry, but I see some of Dad in you. Mom even warned me not to fall for you too quickly, but I'm struggling here. I have to know. Do you like me? I admitted. I felt guilty about my feelings for you. Part of me wanted to be with you just to get back at Jerry, but I realized I don't care about him. I care about you. And that scared me. I'm married, even if it's to someone who doesn't deserve me. But yes, I like you, Gloria, she smiled. Good. Then we can take our time and see how we fit together. We both laughed, and then she asked, Can we at least kiss? I nodded, and she quickly sat in my lap, kissing me deeply. When we pulled apart, she grinned. I'm staking my claim on you. And when the gold runs out, you'll move on? I teased. She giggled. No, I'll reinvest everything I find. I want a relationship built on love, not just lust. Respect is key. We'll find common ground because I'm a pushy woman who knows what she wants, just like my mom. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what Gloria had said. I knew I was rebounding from Stacy, but this felt different. Gloria was right. Stacy might have loved me, but she didn't respect me. That stung. Gloria, on the other hand, openly respected me, even comparing me to her father, whom I hadn't met yet. She was clear about her growing feelings, and while I was deeply attracted to her, it scared me and made me feel guilty. Meanwhile, Mr. Price filed my divorce papers, separating my finances from Stacy's. Without a job, she relied on our meager savings and eventually had to call her parents for help. This meant confessing our separation and its cause, though she conveniently left out the worst parts. Her father called, upset, urging me to consider counseling since, in his version of events, Stacy had merely flirted and gone too far with her boss. I sent him a flash drive with the audio recording of that night. 3 days later, he apologized, admitting he understood but still needed to help his daughters stay out of jail. By the end of the second week, everyone involved knew I had the full audio recordings. The 2 veterinarians were sanctioned, unable to handle anesthetics, which made their work nearly impossible. At the gym, every female member was informed about Jerry's actions, and Stokes Fitness fired him to avoid a mass walkout. I couldn't sue the company, but my attorney had considered it. The criminal trial took 6 months, which I learned was relatively quick. The local media followed the case closely, given the prominence of the men involved. Lawyers tried to suppress the audio recordings, the prosecution's key evidence, and the men even tried to press charges against me for holding them under pressure. That was quickly dismissed. Stacy, feeling betrayed, turned on them and testified for the prosecution, revealing how they planned their attack on me. Her confession of agreeing to pill me earned her a 2-year sentence, with 18 months suspended. While I initially would have been satisfied just to ruin their relationships, I couldn't deny a sense of justice being served. During this time, I grew closer to Gloria. She was a tough taskmaster, pushing me to enroll in college. Hal joined me, and we both did well. By the time the trial came, we had completed a semester with good grades. Gloria also set Hal up with Marie, one of the exes of the Goons. Both women were remarkable, and Hal joked about their shared fates. Gloria and I waited until our divorces were final before taking our relationship further, and it was worth the wait. On our honeymoon, Gloria revealed she had stopped her birth control months earlier, wanting to start a family with me. She also had a temporary tattoo on her back that read, "Exclusive property of Calvin Bostic," which made me laugh. We both felt lucky to have found each other. One day, while out for a snack, we ran into Stacy, who was back at her old job after serving her time. She tried to make small talk, but I informed her that Gloria was now my wife and that we were expecting a child. Another server took over for Stacy, who seemed upset. Over the next few months, Gloria and I settled into a new rhythm. My divorce from Stacy, though difficult, felt necessary for my happiness. Gloria and I focused on our future together, excited about the arrival of our baby. The criminal trial concluded and justice was served, giving me closure. When our son was born, our lives were filled with joy. Gloria and I continued to grow closer, grateful for the second chance at happiness. Looking back, I realized that the difficult journey had led me to where I was meant to be, by Gloria's side, with our son in my arms, finally feeling at home. Sharon was not pleased. Actually, she was furious. Furious with me, her husband, Frank Miller. How did I discern her ire? It's straightforward. While driving us home from a gathering hosted by acquaintances of hers, Anne and Hank Vander Link, she sat clenched in her seat, as distant from me as possible, wearing a scowl that could curdle milk. Why was she so upset with me? Well, truth be told, I reckon she had every right, given that I single-handedly spoiled her evening. Quite the blunder, huh? I ought to feel ashamed for embarrassing my wife, the mother of my 3 kids. Shame on me. Shame on me. So how did I manage to embarrass her and ruin the night? I grabbed the wrong key. You see, there's a peculiar twist to the parties hosted by the Wonderlings. A twist that my dear wife suddenly decided to embrace. Unfortunately for her, I had no interest in it. We'd never attended one of their gatherings before, but my wife, married to me for a decade, neglected to inform me that the evening's affair would deviate from the usual party scene. She neglected to inform me beforehand that at this gathering, all the wives were expected to place their house keys in a bowl. Subsequently, the husbands would blindly select a key from the bowl and then accompany the corresponding wife to her bedroom for an entire night of love-making, illicit pleasures. As the party drew to a close and I suddenly grasped the nature of the event, I nearly lost my mind. I've never been so furious with Sharon. I seized her hand and pulled her into the kitchen. "Did you have prior knowledge of how this party would conclude?" I demanded. She met my gaze with a smirk. "Yes. And you didn't see fit to inform me of this crucial detail beforehand?" "No, because I knew you wouldn't consent if given the choice." "You're absolutely right. I won't consent to this, and I always have a choice. Let's depart from here. We can't leave now. It would be impolite. You'd place me in an uncomfortable situation. Furthermore, it's just for one night. It could inject some excitement back into our marriage. I can do without this type of excitement. Let's apologize and leave." "We truly need a bit of excitement, Frank." "I only need a bit of excitement for one night. I want to feel desired, not solely as a wife and mother." It's just one night and it won't happen again. Plus, I already dropped our house key in the bowl, so we're committed, she reasoned. It's not too late. Look at me, I retorted. Taking her hand, I practically dragged her back to the living room where everyone gathered around a bowl of keys, ready to pick their partner for the night. Sharon resisted, trying to break free from my grasp. Relinquishing my hold, I approached the bowl and declared, I wasn't briefed on this aspect of the evening's festivities, and I won't share my wife with any of you. Digging through the bowl, I located the key to our house, distinguished by its red plastic cover. Extracting it, I addressed the astonished partygoers. As I said, I wasn't informed of the party's rules beforehand. I don't condone infidelity, and my marriage vows are sacred. Though there were murmurs of discontent and a few scowling faces, I remained resolute. Turning to my wife, who was visibly furious, I issued an ultimatum. Sharon, you have a choice, but you must decide now. Come with me and forget this madness, or stay and never return home. I'm leaving. All eyes shifted to my wife, her face now flushed with embarrassment. For a moment, she appeared defiant. I apologize for my husband's behavior, she addressed the group. I'd prefer to stay, but given the circumstances, it's best if I leave. Reluctantly and angrily, she followed me to the car. You're insufferable and selfish, she lashed out as we left. How could you embarrass me like that in front of everyone? We'll never be invited back. Embarrass you? What about how you embarrassed me by not telling me about your plan to sleep with another man tonight? Well, you could pick one of the other wives, and we could both enjoy ourselves. I don't desire another woman, Sharon. I reserve this lovemaking activity exclusively for my wife, and I'm quite dismayed to discover, after a decade of marriage, that you want to share your bed with another man. It would only be once, Frank. Out of all the countless nights we've shared and will continue to share, you're proposing just one night with someone else? It's not a minor request, especially considering I've been a faithful husband for the past 10 years. In truth, Sharon, this is a significant request. I can't believe what I'm hearing. But it means so much to you, doesn't it? Yes, Frank, it does. I've been anticipating this for weeks. A night where I'm not just a wife and mother, but a woman experiencing adventure, feeling cherished, and indulging in a few hours of closeness with another man. So it's your only opportunity to have coition with someone other than your husband? Yes, I suppose. I slammed on the brakes, executed a 180-degree turn in the middle of the street, and sped back toward the Van der Links's house, tires squealing. Sharon let out a squeal as I made an exclamation. What are you thinking, Frank? If sleeping with another man for one night is that important to you, then go ahead and do it, Sharon. I halted in front of their house, noticing all the other cars still parked there. It seemed there was still time for you to join in. So go ahead, step out. Have a good time tonight. Find some stranger to satisfy you in ways I evidently can't. Frank, this is just an adventure, something different. Your performance is always perfect and you know how to please me. But I can't go to them alone. We both have to participate. Each of us has to spend the night with a new partner. I've already told you, I want no part in this. Sharon, I've never been unfaithful to you and I won't sleep with another woman until our marriage is over. What does that mean? It means exactly what I said. It's decision time, Sharon. So if you're going to do this, go ahead and join your unfaithful friends. I'm sure they'll welcome a beautiful woman into their circle, even if she's not accompanied by her husband. Sharon reached for the doorknob but hesitated. I could see her contemplating. Could you pick me up in the morning, Frank? Wherever I end up, I'll call you and let you know. It would mean a lot to me. No chance. But I'm sure your new lover will be happy to take you wherever after spending the night with you. It sounds awful when you put it like that, Frank. He won't be my lover. He'll simply be someone new, a one-night experience, that's all. I love you, Frank. You're the only man I've ever loved or will ever love. Do you truly believe that? You can't claim to love me and then go through with this plan. Let me clarify. You're just seeking a new carnal encounter, right? Consequently, another man will potentially impregnate you. That's crude, Frank. You know I'm on birth control, so that's not a concern. He won't get me pregnant. But yes, just one night with someone new. It'll be thrilling. Have you ever wondered what it's like to explore someone new lovemaking? Just a new experience, new sensations, everything fresh and different. Just wait and see. Our closeness will be better than ever. Well, enjoy your time with the new guy and the new sensations. Sharon, I hope you're aware of what you're doing. It's only one night, Frank. It's not a big deal. Even a second would be too much. We have our entire future together. If you do this, we won't have anything left. I'm pleading with you, Sharon. Please don't do this. You're overreacting, Frank, and I'm sticking to my decision. You won't ruin my night. I want to experience something new, and you can't stop me. I'm going through with it, and you'll just have to accept it. Do you understand? Tomorrow morning, I'll be completely devoted to you again, and I'll make you forget all about this. Tomorrow morning, you'll be history. I'll never want you again after you let another man have what I've always considered mine. Now you're being irrational. I belong to you, and you'll want me too. I'll make sure of it. Sharon, listen to me. If you leave this car and go back to that house, it's over between us. Your one night will cost you your marriage and your family. No, that won't happen, Frank. I won't allow it. We're married and always will be. We're meant for each other. I love you, and I know how much you love me. We'll get through this. You'll see. I'll make it up to you countless times. You're breaking my heart, Sharon. Don't act like a child. Think of it as taking me on an adventure. What's exciting for you is the end of us. You're not making sense, Frank. I'll change your mind in the morning, and you know how I'll do it. Do you honestly think I'd touch you after you spend the night with someone else? You'll touch me, and more. I'll ensure that. God, I never realized how foolish you are. Get out. My words stunned her, but she opened the car door and began to exit. See you in the morning, Frank. I shook my head sadly, sighing. No, Sharon, I won't see you. And as soon as she pushed the door to close it, I stepped on the gas pedal, making the tires squeal again, this time for half a block. As I drove away, I stole a glance at her in the rearview mirror. She looked completely stunned, standing on the side of the road in disbelief, mouth agape, still motionless as I turned the corner and she vanished from sight. In my heart of hearts, I prayed she'd call me immediately, admit her mistake, and ask me to come back for her. But she didn't. I was shattered and overwhelmed. Tears streamed down my cheeks, blurring my vision. My wife had just chosen a night with a stranger over our 10 years of marriage. Based on her behavior, I'm convinced she genuinely believed I'd brush off her little scheme. Maybe she expected me to be mad for a couple of days, then she'd charm me back into bed and everything would be forgiven. Well, she couldn't have been more mistaken. My dad once told me that if a woman is seriously contemplating sleeping with another man, she's already mentally done it. For a married woman to entertain such thoughts, she's already broken her vows. Sure, it's normal to fantasize about an attractive person, but if she's plotting how to make it a reality, she's already crossed the line. As painful as this realization is, it's shattered our marriage, and it's time to move forward. The real tragedy in all of this is our 3 children, 9-year-old Jocelyn, 8-year-old Rebecca Ann, and 4-year-old Frank Jr. How can I bear to be without them every day? But I can't let Sharon's actions go without serious consequences. The kids were at my mother's for the weekend, giving me time to plan my next moves. I drove around aimlessly for half an hour, still holding out hope that Sharon would call for a ride. But it became clear she'd made her decision. Finally, I settled on my initial plan and headed home. Upon pulling into the driveway, my cell phone rang and I hoped it was her, urging me to pick her up. However, the caller ID revealed it wasn't Sharon. Despite this, I answered the call. In the background, the sounds of music and laughter from the party resonated, and a man spoke. Frank, buddy, it's Rick Wilson from the party you left. Your wife gave me your number, hoping I could talk some sense into you. She's eager for tonight's events. That's all she's saying. You're one lucky guy. Every guy here hopes to get her key. She's insisting someone will have an unforgettable night, and she wants you to be a part of it. It's getting heated here. Everyone's eager to see who they'll be spending the night with. You still have time to come back and pick a key. There are some attractive women here ready to show you a good time tonight. Screw you, Rick Wilson, you manipulative fool. And everyone at your party can go to hell with you, including my unfaithful wife. I hope you all meet a horrible fate. I hung up and staggered into the house. In less than 20 minutes, I packed 2 suitcases with enough clothes for a week or two. Grabbing my laptop and shaving kit, I loaded everything into the car. After rummaging through a few drawers, I found our marriage certificate and tore it into 4 pieces. Then, I retrieved a hammer for my wedding ring. It took several blows to flatten it, but once done, I placed both the certificate and ring on Sharon's pillow, locked the front door behind me, and drove off into the night. I aimed to locate a motel a few miles outside of town, but before that, I circled past the Van Deerlinks' place once more. Several cars had departed the party, and a few people stood in pairs conversing on the street. Not spotting Sharon, I assumed she had either moved on with her new companion or paired up with Mr. Van Der Link himself. The motel I settled on was in a nearby town. It didn't appear overly large, but it boasted a secluded parking lot in the rear, shielding my car from prying eyes in case anyone happened to look for it. After locking the car, I purchased a six-pack of Newcastle from the adjacent convenience store and opted to catch some TV. The first two drinks eased my tension, and as I cracked open the third, my phone rang. Seeing it was Sharon, and knowing she wasn't calling for me to pick her up, I allowed it to go to voicemail. "Frank, you're behaving like a child over this. Rick Wilson filled me in on what you told him. How many times do I have to say it's just one night? I'll let one new guy have coition with me a few times, and that doesn't make me immoral. I swear, even if it stings a bit, I'll make it up to you in ways you can't imagine when I return tomorrow. You probably don't care, but since you removed our house key from the bowl, they gave me a new one. The guy who got it is named Glenn. He seems nice and assured me he won't pressure me into anything. He's married with kids like ours. Since you're at our house, I went to his. His wife and her boyfriend will also stay, but in a different part of the house so we won't disturb each other when things get heated and we start making noise. You know how vocal I can get when you touch me?" She giggled. "Darling, I know you're a bit upset, but I promise I won't let him do anything you haven't done." I suggested to Glenn that we stick to the usual stuff. He's met me a few times, mostly in missionary or something else for variety. Glenn agreed, especially since it's my first time with another man. He'll take me home when we're done tomorrow. I'll shower and freshen up before I return to be clean and ready for you. No leftovers for you, baby. Sweet dreams, my love. See you in the morning. Get ready for some excitement. Love you, Frank." I felt like my insides were being torn apart. Never did I imagine I was married to such a foolish and immoral woman. Sure, Sharon had always been a bit flighty, but it was part of her endearing charm. Now her foolishness was amplified and could cost her everything. Her life, her husband, and possibly her children. She couldn't comprehend that I wouldn't forgive her after she let another man have her and flaunted it in my face. I'm sure everyone at the party had a good laugh at my expense. I was furious, wounded, and utterly humiliated. But my wife didn't care. I knew I should have ignored her message, but I couldn't resist. I dialed her number, and she answered on the third ring. "Hey, honey. Glenn and I just got into bed and are getting cozy, so I can't talk for long." "Shut up, Sharon. This is likely the last you'll hear from me. You have no idea what you've done, but you'll soon find out. Enjoy your time with Glenn because the consequences will be more severe than you can imagine. Understand this, Sharon. Once you sleep with Glenn, our marriage is finished. Got it? It's over. I never thought I'd say this, but I hate you more now than I've ever loved you. I can't wait to rid myself of you completely. Expect to hear from my lawyer next week." And with that, I hung up. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail once more. "Frank," she sounded on the verge of tears. "Why are you doing this? How can you say such things to me? I'm your wife. Can't you just let me have this one night? Glenn and I are just beginning, and now you're ruining everything for me. I don't know if I can fully enjoy being with him the way I want. We're not getting divorced. I'll be home in the morning, and we can sort things out. I would come home now, but I promised Glenn I'd be with him tonight. Please understand, I have to do this. He got my key, and I promised him he could sleep with me. And he really wants it now. Oh yes, right now, while I'm talking to you, I have to go. Oh God, Glenn is ready. Oh, I love you, Frank. I'll always love you. Please don't say that. When I do this with him, our marriage will end. There's nothing I can do about it, honey. He's already here. Oh God, please. Oh yes, please try to understand." And I heard her whisper to him, "Sleep with me, Glenn. This is my night. See you in the morning, dear." And again, I couldn't resist. I called her back, and this time the phone rang several times before going to voicemail, indicating Glenn already had it, so I left a message. "After hearing your last voicemail, it's clear Glenn already has you, and you love it. You can spend the night with him, feeling all the new sensations he gives you. You've shattered my heart, Sharon, and I'll never forgive you for that. It's good you kept your promise to Glenn, a man you just met, but you couldn't uphold your marriage vows to the man who loved you and stayed faithful for over 10 years. I don't even recognize you anymore. You won't see me in the morning. You may never see me again, but next week you'll be served with divorce papers, and I'll file for infidelity. Now that you're with Glenn, what else did you allow? Only me. You're officially a cheating adulterer. From now on, you can sleep with any man you want as much as you want. But in case you care, you've lost me forever, and I'll definitely keep that promise." Sharon never returned my call. I know how aroused she becomes during coition. She enters a realm where nothing and no one else matters. It's just her and the man she's with. Whether she received my last message or not didn't matter. The damage was irreparable. Our marriage was finished. I couldn't forgive her for treating me with such disrespect, humiliating me, and undermining our marriage. I finished the remainder of the six-pack. I didn't want to spend the night picturing my wife lying undressed in Glenn's bed, the woman who, until tonight, had been exclusively mine. Sharon was vocal during coition, and I was certain she would cry out for Glenn to satisfy her, just as she did with me, and I'm sure she did the same with Glenn. Eventually, the beer took its toll, and I drifted off to sleep, tears still streaming down my face. I woke up about 4 hours later, and reality dawned on me. My once beautiful wife had betrayed me, and I needed to devise a plan to safeguard my children, rid myself of her, and inflict as much misery as possible on those at the party. We reside in Biloxi, Mississippi, a picturesque antebellum area on the Gulf Coast. Given that Mississippi recognizes infidelity as grounds for divorce, I might avoid paying child support and potentially gain custody of my children. I required a skilled attorney, a very capable attorney. I showered, changed clothes, and dialed my mom at 7:30 to brief her on the situation. She was equally stunned by Sharon's actions. With the kids under her care for the weekend, she assured me she wouldn't divulge anything to them. I informed her I'd retrieve them once I had a plan in place. Despite my reluctance, I conceded that Sharon would likely be awarded custody, at least temporarily. I grudgingly acknowledged she had been a devoted mother to our children and a faithful wife to me. However, that perception shifted after last night. Following my conversation with my mom, I made my way to a nearby diner for breakfast. Before I could even park, my phone rang. It was Sharon. Contemplating whether to answer, I opted for voicemail. Strangely, she didn't leave a message but promptly called again. Ignoring the call, she persistently dialed until eventually, on the fifth attempt, she left a tearful voicemail. "Frank, please answer the phone. Talk to me, damn it! What do you mean? You might never see me again. And why all this talk about divorce papers? You can't leave me, Frank. I won't allow it. Our 3 precious children need us both. Dear God, Frank, why did you tear up our marriage certificate and discard your wedding ring? How could you? I gave you that ring on our wedding day, and you vowed to wear it forever. It symbolizes our enduring love for each other. I knew you'd be upset with me, but I never imagined you'd go this far. I love you deeply, Frank. I just needed that special night with Glenn. And it was special. He made me feel youthful again. I've already forgotten what it's like to laugh and scream simultaneously, but as wonderful as last night was, you're my man, Frank. My only man. I know how to make it right and dissolve your grievances. Please come home, Frank. Let me show you how much I adore you. Come home and bring me back." At that moment, she broke into tears, her words becoming muffled and hard to decipher. Damn it, Frank. Why can't you see that I just needed one night with someone new? I needed to experience something different with a man who desired me, who craved me. It felt good to know that another man finds me desirable, that he can't wait to have me, to possess me. You don't understand how affirming it is for a woman my age to see a man excited about her and to know she's the reason he desires her. Oh, please, Frank, you have to realize it was only about coition, nothing more. He simply had coition with me. Please, Frank, let's talk. I love you. You and our kids mean everything to me. Her voice wavered as she spoke. It was just coition, Frank. Oh, God. He only had coition with me a few times. We were just engaging in coition, that's all, Frank. Her sobs persisted until the message concluded. I stood outside the diner, stunned. Had she harbored these thoughts throughout our entire marriage? And now, after 30 years, it all surfaced suddenly. Sharon remained a striking woman, shoulder-length dark brown hair, light blue eyes, and a stunning figure. While her chest weren't overly large, they weren't small either. And yes, her hips had widened slightly after 3 kids. Still, she continued to attract attention from men wherever she went. So what was this talk about needing to feel desired by another man? I consistently demonstrated my love and desire for her. I regularly surprised her with flowers and took her out on weekly dates. I even bought her alluring negligees and affirmed her beauty and my love for her daily. Until last night, I believed our bed life was fulfilling. We made love at least 3 times a week, always reaching multiple climaxes. What could I have possibly overlooked? Despite losing my appetite, I entered the diner, found a vacant table, and ordered scrambled eggs, toast, and black coffee. Although I barely touched my meal, I consumed at least 6 cups of coffee. I had never felt so adrift, so hollow, so utterly defeated. I'd heard people wish for pass away, and now I understood why. The only thing keeping me from succumbing to despair was the thought of my children. I had to endure for their sake. to navigate the turmoil Sharon had unleashed and carve out a future for them. This realization fueled my resolve. I would persevere. I just needed to devise a plan. Sharon called my phone incessantly that day, but I consistently sent her calls to voicemail. She pleaded for understanding, but never once apologized for her actions. There was no admission of error, only insistence that she needed that one night. And my role, apparently, was to comprehend and support her. All they did was engage in carnal activity, merely 3 times throughout the night, and again in the morning. That's it. How could I fail to recognize that this was just a one-night stand, easily forgiven and forgotten? She mentioned she was worried she hadn't turned off her phone in time, and I might have overheard her with Glenn. She hoped I hadn't heard too much. I had to give her credit. She certainly knew how to plunge a knife into my heart and twist the blade. I couldn't fathom her level of foolishness. If there was one silver lining, it was that I now possessed sufficient audio evidence of her infidelity to use against her in court. I wasn't certain if it would suffice, but it was undeniably compelling and left nothing to the imagination. Tomorrow, I would seek out a competent lawyer and gather all the necessary information. I paid a visit to my children at my mother's place. She mentioned that Sharon had already called to check on the kids and inquire about my whereabouts. Mom informed her that I was devastated by her actions and had no desire to see or speak to her. According to my mother, Sharon began to cry, expressing her confusion. Mom reassured her that no man would comprehend why a wife would flaunt a night of closeness with another man in her husband's face. Sharon inquired if she should retrieve the children, but my mother suggested it would be best for her to keep them for a few more days until things settled down. The children greeted me with joy, but inquired about their mother's whereabouts. I explained that she was occupied with a special project and they would be staying with their grandmother a bit longer. We played together, shared dinner, then I bid them farewell with hugs and kisses before heading back to my motel. Tomorrow promised to be hectic. Before calling it a day, I made one final stop, or rather, drove past. Tears welled up as soon as I laid eyes on my house again. I mourned what I had lost and could never reclaim. It struck me as odd not to spot any unfamiliar vehicles in the driveway. Although a car could have been in the garage, the solitary glow from the kitchen downstairs indicated Sharon was likely alone tonight. Yet a lingering concern surfaced. I still cared. Despite her actions, the betrayal stung deeply. I wrestled with the urge to stop and observe her, but ultimately succumbed. Parking a block away, I approached the side where I could peek through the kitchen window. There she sat, a discarded bottle of Grey Goose by her side, hair disheveled, mascara smudged. Clad in a robe, she rested her head on the table facing me, eyes closed. It was evident she wept, surrounded by a mound of tissues. For a moment, a pang of sympathy stirred within me. Then, recollection of her choices and their repercussions flooded back, chilling me to the core. I resisted the urge to lash out and instead retreated to my car, driving off with a tinge of satisfaction. Perhaps she was beginning to grasp the gravity of her actions. If she sought solace, she could turn to her paramour, Glenn. Monday dawned, and I faced a busy agenda. At the diner, I devoured eggs, toast, and coffee, finishing my meal entirely. I phoned my mom and spoke with each of my children, assuring them of my love and imminent return. Next, I contacted my office, informing my assistant that personal matters would occupy my attention for the next 2 days, urging her to reach out if anything urgent arose. She inquired if all was well, and I replied in the affirmative, promising to elaborate later. During my final year at Ole Miss, I shared an apartment with 2 close friends, Douglas Prater III and Maxwell McCrae. Our bond endured over time, despite infrequent reunions. While I pursued a degree in computer science, Doug pursued business administration, and Max pursued law. Initially, I reached out to Doug, asking if he and Max could join me for drinks around 5. I explained that I needed their counsel on a pressing issue, and Doug agreed to coordinate with Max to meet me at the lava bar by the beach. Arriving early, I awaited their arrival. Max appeared slightly after 5, followed by Doug 10 minutes later. After warm greetings, we settled at a patio table, ordered beers, and raised our glasses in a toast. "What's on your mind, Frank?" inquired Doug. "Your call sounded serious," he added. "Sharon cheated on me and flaunted it," I disclosed, narrating the entire ordeal. "Man, that's rough," sympathized Doug. "I can't fathom she'd do such a thing," chimed in Max. "Indeed, and with no remorse, believing I'm overreacting. Can you believe that?" I exclaimed. "So, what's the plan?" Max inquired. "I'm contemplating divorce and seeking retribution against Glenn and the others at the party. But most importantly, I want to pursue custody of my kids," I outlined. It won't be a cakewalk, Frank, cautioned Max. Unless she's unfit as a mother. If she brings strange men home for trysts while the kids are present, you have leverage. Otherwise, if she's a good mother, she'll likely secure custody and you'll have to pay child support, he advised. I'm fine with that, as long as I have frequent access to them. It's manageable, Max affirmed. Courts generally prefer both parents to be involved in child rearing, provided they're both competent caregivers. What about finances? Doug interjected. Sharon's a stay-at-home mom, and I assume you earn a substantial six-figure income. How are your financials looking? Checking and savings accounts? Any investments? 401k? Individual retirement account? I have all of those, totaling around $700,000 to $800,000, perhaps a bit more. The court will likely split it evenly. Give Sharon the house along with custody. But if you can substantiate her infidelity, which appears quite plausible, you may avoid alimony payments. Do you know an exceptional divorce attorney? One of the partners at my firm is among Mississippi's top family law practitioners. Her name's Maddie Simmons. Want me to arrange a meeting for you? Certainly, the sooner the better, Max suggested. In the meantime, Doug added, I'll explore options to safeguard some of your assets. Send me all your financial details and I'll handle it. After another toast, we shared a few more drinks and bid farewell. Suddenly, I felt a sense of relief I hadn't experienced since this ordeal began. As I drove back to my motel, my mind raced with all the tasks ahead. My cell phone rang and it was Sharon. After a brief hesitation, I realized I'd have to confront her eventually, so I pulled over and answered. What do you want, Sharon? I opted for directness, cutting to the chase. What do you think I want, Frank? I want my husband to come home where he belongs. I could hear the tears in her voice. Unfortunately, your little escapade with Glenn, as you termed it, makes it impossible for me to return home. Her sobs filled the silence. Don't say that, Frank. Don't you dare say that. I spent just one night away from you after 10 years, and that's not grounds for divorce. Think again. Infidelity is certainly grounds for divorce in Mississippi. Why do you keep calling it cheating? It was just one night with someone new, just a fling. When a married woman gets involved with someone new, whether it's for one night or 1 second, it's cheating, I said. I told you that the second you had coition with another man, it would be over between us, and I wasn't kidding. Oh God, please, Frank, you can't do this to me, Sharon pleaded. You did this to yourself. Sharon, what the hell happened to you? Are you on hallucinogenic medications? Did you have a mental breakdown, or are you just incredibly stupid? I asked. It just seems to me that you were so caught up in the idea of having coition with another man that you didn't care about our children or what I thought or wanted. You just had to do it. Well, guess what? You did it. And now you're paying the consequences, I continued. I thought we were really happy. Nice house, 3 great kids. Our bed life was great. And then you ruined it all by sleeping with some stranger and rubbing it in my face, I lamented. We've always been happy, Frank. And we are happy now. I was just wondering what it would be like to be with another man for one dirty night in our long life together. Just try someone new without injury. That's all, Sharon explained. No injury? For some reason, you don't understand at all what damage you have caused. You completely destroyed our family overnight. Because of your selfishness, you have broken our life into a million pieces. And there is no hope of ever putting them back together again, I declared. First off, Sharon, you broke my heart. Even though you made it clear you didn't care, I said. Do you remember me? Your husband, the man who loved you without question from the moment I laid eyes on you. The one who works long hours every day to give you and our kids the life you dream of. And yet, you spat in my face and left me to find comfort in the arms of a total stranger. You gave him parts of your body that 10 years ago you promised would only belong to me. You made this promise before God, our families, and all our friends. And last night you rubbed it in my face, letting me know you were going to do it, no matter how much I begged you not to. You basically told me to get the hell out. You do whatever you want, and it's none of my business. I never meant for it to look like this, Frank. I don't know why, but I didn't think I was hurting you. I just wanted to try something new. I love you. It was never about you. It was about what I needed. And that's what brought us here. You took yourself out of the equation. All your cheating with Glenn last night concerned only you and him. You didn't think about me or our kids. I deserve a special night just for myself. Well, luckily for you, Your Highness, you got your wish, and it ended your marriage to me, and most likely tarnished your reputation with your family and friends. There might be a day when I forgive you, but I'll never forget, and I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. just like you called me a spoiled brat for being upset about your affair. Let's see how you handle that, knowing everyone will hear you confess to what you did with Glenn. And how many times? Oh God, Frank, please. My parents would be devastated if they found out. Too bad, Sharon. You should have thought about that before. You made your bed and now you have to lie in it. You seem to think what you did is like getting a traffic ticket or not returning a library book. You traded a solid 10-year marriage with a man who adored you for late-night encounters with a stranger who only cared about instant gratification. Do you feel good, Sharon? That Glenn slept with you 4 times and it cost you your family? I didn't have to lose anything, Frank. You should have loved me enough to support me and let me do it. There isn't a single sane man on this planet who would support his wife having an affair just because she wanted to try someone new. It doesn't work that way, and you should have known it. What were you thinking, Sharon, that led you to this? I didn't expect you to be so upset about it. I mean, seriously, Frank, what's the big deal about letting another man have coition with me multiple times? Sharon questioned. And what I did with Glenn last night doesn't mean I love you any less. I've heard about couples hooking up at Van der Links, and it intrigued me. Why can't a husband or wife have a love-making night with a stranger? Someone nice and safe, enjoy the experience and explore new sensations? I decided I wanted to experience another man having closeness with me. It didn't mean I loved you any less, Frank, Sharon continued. It just meant I needed a new experience with a different man, just once, and then I would fully commit myself to you again and never do it again. But that meant you didn't respect me. I begged you not to do it over and over again, and you just smiled and said, "See you in the morning." Frank, you took away the closeness we've shared for over 10 years. The vows that meant everything to me meant so little to you. Our bodies coming together created 3 beautiful children who love us both. We were a family, and now you willingly gave that part of yourself that created our children to another man. And for what? A good time? A one-night stand? You say it was just one night and I need to accept it and move on, I said angrily. I say it was nothing less than a complete abandonment of me, our family, our sacred vows of loyalty and allegiance, and any respect you've ever had for me. You wanted to be with another man, and you did it. Congratulations. But in doing so, Sharon, you threw away everything you supposedly valued and treasured. Part of me still loves you, but I can never be a part of your life again, I admitted. Damn it, Frank. Why are you so stubborn? Why can't you understand that it was just something I needed and come to terms with it? I'm yours forever. Nothing has changed. Everything's different now, Sharon. You're not just mine anymore. I don't get why you can't see that. I pleaded with you not to do this. I can't forgive and forget. You betrayed me willingly, and this pain will last a lifetime. I found a lawyer. Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce, citing infidelity. I'll name your lover Glenn and anyone else from your gathering that I can identify. Imagine their reaction when they learn you're responsible for breaking up their circle and possibly damaging their reputations. Go to hell, Sharon, and take your cheating friends with you. The moment I met with Maddie Simmons, ESQ, I knew she was the right attorney to handle my situation. She cut through the nonsense and got straight to business. She asked why I wanted a divorce and what outcomes I sought. I explained I expected to split our assets with Sharon, offering our house in exchange for less cash. I knew I likely wouldn't get full custody of the kids, but I wanted unrestricted visitation without child support. I presented all the audio evidence I had of Sharon's infidelity, where she confessed repeatedly to sleeping with Glenn. Miss Simmons shook her head in disbelief that my wife was so careless as to admit her affair, let alone in a way that could be used against her in court. Well, we'll probably need a voice recognition expert to confirm it's your wife's voice, she advised. But unless we encounter an exceptionally biased judge, the recordings should hold up in court. We spent the remaining hour discussing my objectives regarding Glenn and the other participants at the wife-swapping event. While she doubted we could demand monetary compensation from them, she suggested we could find ways to expose their activities and shame them enough to inflict significant repercussions. I agreed that would be satisfactory for me. After providing a deposit, I requested that Sharon be served promptly. She assured me it wouldn't take long and promised to notify me beforehand. On Tuesday afternoon, I picked up my kids from my mom and took them to Sharon's house. When she greeted us at the door, she hugged and kissed all 3 of them warmly before reaching out to me. However, I stepped back, causing her to burst into tears and plead with me to stay. I explained that I couldn't, but I thought it would be best for the kids to return home to her. I arranged to pick them up on Friday for the weekend. Sharon appeared to be struggling. and I sympathized with her, but she brought this upon herself. Her distress was no worse than what I was enduring because of her actions. On Wednesday, I returned to work, realizing I couldn't neglect my job. I needed it now more than ever, not only for financial support, but also as a distraction. I believed that if I continued to dwell in the agony and self-pity of Sharon's betrayal, I would eventually lose my sanity, which I couldn't afford for the sake of my children. On Thursday, I met Doug and Max again, this time for dinner at the Oyster House, where I indulged in hand-shucked oysters and a dirty martini. During dinner and drinks, I updated them on my children and the divorce. Doug explored ways to conceal some of my money, and I granted him permission to proceed. Though it wouldn't be much, it would be beneficial in the long run. We devised a relatively simple plan to disrupt the wife-swapping club without risking accusations of slander. Max had a friend who worked as a reporter for the Biloxi Sun-Herald. He was confident that if I provided him with the location of Vanderlink's house and the approximate meeting time of the wife-swapping group, he could uncover the identities of some participants. He planned to write an editorial exposing the Biloxi wife-swapping scene as larger than believed, publishing photos of couples coming and going, hinting at the involvement of certain businesses without naming names. This would likely incite the religious majority to raise objections, causing trouble for the entire group. I gave Max what little information I had, and he said he would begin with that. With optimistic words, we shook hands and parted until next time. My weekend with the kids was delightful. We went shopping for new clothes, visited Disney's Grand 18 movie theater in D'Iberville, and spent the day at the beach, swimming and playing frisbee. My children were my top priority, and I swore I would never leave them. On Monday morning, Max called me. A friend of his from the newspaper had embraced the story idea and was working on capturing photos of couples entering Vanderlinks and emerging with new partners. Although faces would be blurred, people aren't foolish, and in a city this size, it wouldn't take long for the moral majority to piece it together. If all went well, it could become a front-page story. Later this week, I'll keep my fingers crossed. Sharon persistently called me, pleading for me to return home, promising to do anything to make me forget about her actions. However, she never apologized or acknowledged her mistake. On Wednesday, my lawyer informed me that Sharon would be served with divorce papers at our home on Friday morning. Shortly after, Doug revealed he had found a way to conceal about a third of my money by putting it in my children's names. Then, Max called, informing me that his friend from the newspaper discovered that the wife-swapping meeting planned to gather again Friday night at Vanderlink's. He intended to stake out the location and photograph everyone coming and going. He also wanted to interview me about the party, with the article scheduled to appear in the paper next week. I felt a sense of relief I hadn't experienced in a while. Friday arrived, and I anticipated Sharon's call after she received the divorce papers. As expected, my lawyer called around 2:30 to confirm she had been served. Within minutes, Sharon called, her tone far from friendly. "Hi, Sharon. How are you?" "What did you do, Frank?" she demanded. "I filed for divorce, Sharon, as I said I would," I responded calmly. "And I told you there will be no divorce. You've reported me for treason. Spending one night with another man isn't cheating, Frank," she retorted tearfully. "I have to disagree, Sharon. Having love-making relations with someone other than your spouse is infidelity in Mississippi," I stated firmly. Her voice cracked as she cried, "Why are you so angry with me, Frank? I love you. Glenn and I had an affair, that's all." "My mistake, Sharon. How could I have misunderstood that having coition with someone other than your spouse wasn't cheating? It's over, Sharon. I warned you repeatedly and begged you not to, but you did it anyway. And now you'll face the consequences. And I believe your troubles are far from over. Goodbye, Sharon. I wish you a happy life," I concluded, ending the call. My foremost dilemma remained my enduring love for Sharon, a feeling that likely would persist. However, trust was irreparably shattered, rendering it impossible for me to continue in a marriage with a cheater. Though I knew I should avoid Vanderlink's Friday night gathering, I couldn't resist the temptation to drive by, just to glimpse what was happening. Plus, I wanted to check if Sharon's car was present, even though I suspected she would skip the event. To my relief, her car was nowhere in sight. Yet she could have arrived with someone else. True, the club typically permitted only couples, but they made an exception for her once before. Who's to say they wouldn't do so again? Across the street, a van was parked, likely housing the reporter. I silently wished him luck in exposing their misdeeds. Soon afterward, Max's journalist friend contacted me for details, which I readily provided. He disclosed capturing over 100 photographs and recognizing more than a dozen couples, all respected citizens of the city. Oddly, it appeared that the same couples were not consistently entering and exiting the house. 2 hours later, Max furnished him with a photo of my wife to aid in identification, confirming she wasn't among the participants. He requested my account of the key party's inner workings, particularly regarding how keys were deposited into a large bowl. Though I hadn't witnessed the subsequent key selection firsthand, I gleaned a clear understanding from Sharon's account and eavesdropping on other couples discussing past experiences. Before concluding, he sought permission to indirectly reference first-hand knowledge of a marriage ruined by such parties, leading to children suffering due to divorce. I encouraged him to proceed until names were called. The article surfaced in the Sunday edition of the newspaper, triggering widespread outrage. Not only did it grace the front page with a large photo of couples entering and exiting, their faces obscured, but a dozen additional images sprawled across 4 more pages. Despite efforts to conceal identities, many participants were easily recognizable by their vehicles and attire. It was essentially Biloxi's elite. By Monday, the entire city buzzed with discussions about the exposé and the scandalous parties. Numerous priests aired grievances in radio and TV interviews, decrying the moral decline within their Christian community, while civic leaders denounced the city's tarnished reputation. Lawsuits and counterclaims ensued, to no avail. Repercussions included prominent companies losing clients, and multiple couples ending up in divorce court. For me, it was a humorous form of retribution for the agony endured from losing my wife and family. Even if some recognized my humiliation as a betrayed man, I remained indifferent. Revenge was all that mattered. Sharon persistently attempted to reconcile for months, but her efforts were futile. The divorce finalized, granting me joint custody of our children. During my custody months, she had them on weekends and vice versa. It wasn't ideal, but we managed. Since Sharon didn't contest any aspect of the divorce, I spared her the embarrassment of sharing the audio confession of her infidelity with her family or friends. As for the couples involved in the key parties, some divorced and relocated, while others simply vanished. Sharon resumed dating, although she seemed oblivious to why her actions were unacceptable to me. But that was her concern. I wished her future husband the best of luck. I dated several pleasant women, but never found one I was ready to commit to for life. Some wanted to move in, but I remained hesitant to hand over a key.
I'm now middle-aged as they speak, but at one point I realized that living with a woman for the rest of life was a real challenge. It would be more accurate to say that a woman is afraid to marry because she scares my stepmother to favor his husband terribly, but my stepmother, who gives me hints and tries to connect with me behind my father's back, surprisingly is my partner, although legally she is my father's wife. To be more frank, I gave up marriage due to my stepmother. My stepmother is over 60, but she still plays the role of my woman. After confirming that my father has fallen asleep, my stepmother, who rushes to my room and urges me to quickly get things done, was only living nominally as a couple with my weary and elderly father. The role of a real husband was something I had to fulfill. My father has been frail since his youth, and I knew he was not destined for a long life. There was a time when I thought of my stepmother as merely the one who would take care of my father's sickness. My biological mother passed away in an unexpected accident. When I was in the upper grades of elementary school, I lost my mother at a young age, and the sense of loss and sadness was overwhelming. After my mother passed away, my relatives started urging my father to remarry in a hurry. The adult relatives told me, who was still in my early teens, that it was my duty as a child to convince my father to remarry. Since my father was immersed in work due to his weak health, I had to take care of all things such as chores and studies by myself. If I didn't do the housework, my father, who was tired all day from work, had to do it when he came home. My father, who always lacked energy and easily felt fatigue, never left work on time. I didn't want to bother him with chores when he came home. It seems I was maturing. After enrolling in college and experiencing campus life for a year, like most men, I enlisted in the military. Although I was worried about my frail father, I decided it would be better to experience military life while I was still young. The first time I became aware of my stepmother's existence was during my time in the military. When I was a private in the military, on a certain Sunday morning, I was told someone had come to visit. Hurrying out to see who it might be, I made my way to the infirmary. My father was there, with a woman standing next to him. My father introduced her to me as his companion, and she greeted me with a warm smile. It was surprising to see my father, who had been unresponsive to suggestions of remarrying, arrive with a young woman without a word of explanation. My father suggested we go out, and I followed his lead. In the 80s, when I was serving in the military, we were told to always answer yes, I am enjoying it if someone asked us how we were doing. I responded with a loud yes, I understand, and got into my father's car parked in the guardhouse parking lot. My father bought my favorite chicken stew and told me to call the woman who came with him mother. The woman, who spoke with a bright smile in this incomprehensible situation, said, I am young and lacking in many ways, but I promise to take good care of your father, so please bear with me. Despite her innocent appearance, her gaze was sparkling and her tone was refreshing. I asked her, Can I really call you mother? And she responded with a bright smile, Are you really accepting me as your mother? Her teeth were so white and beautiful. My stepmother, who had formed a new family, seemed to make a lot of effort to win my favor, as I was my father's only child. I accepted my stepmother as my mother, and thought I should be good to my stepmother in the future. After the first visit with my stepmother, my father often came to visit. When I came back from the visit, the expressions of my comrades in the living quarters changed. It was because my stepmother had brought an enormous amount of snacks for us to share. After my discharge from the military, I returned to university. However, the 80s were filled with endless demonstrations, and it was impossible to have proper classes. I didn't participate in the demonstrations with my classmates and was busy going home. My university peers called me a coward for not joining the fight, but I didn't pay attention to such criticism. Not demonstrating was my free will. When I arrived home and rang the bell, my stepmother always greeted me with a smile. After dinner, I studied while my stepmother did the housework. At that time, whenever there was a problem in my father's company, he would go to the overseer's branch to resolve it. In an era when hardly anyone from school had traveled abroad, the fact that my father was going abroad was a testament to his capabilities and his high standing in the company. Thanks to this, our household was quite well off. The day that incident happened, I arrived home and my stepmother greeted me warmly. "Your father had to go on a sudden long-term business trip today. He came home, quickly packed his things, and left. I didn't think much of it since my father was always busy." After dinner, I felt a bit bored and was looking at old photo albums. My stepmother asked, "Son, can I have a drink with you tonight?" I replied, "You drink, mother? I had no that is." My stepmother didn't say anything, but simply showed her upper 4 teeth and smiled. She always called me son instead of just calling me by my name. I felt like I understood her feelings. It seemed like she attached a lot of significance to our relationship as mother and son. My stepmother and I had a light drink together. At that time, soju was a bit stronger than it is now. We had some liquor at home, but my stepmother knew I preferred soju, so she seemed to have bought some in advance. She asked me with a curious expression how my classes were going with the relentless protests, how I was getting along with my friends, and I answered her questions as I drank. My stepmother turned out to be a lightweight drinker. After just 2 shots of soju, her face turned red as a beet, and even her eyes were bloodshot. She quickly became incoherent and disoriented, and as she called me son, she suggested we look at the photo album together. She pinched my cheek as she marveled at my cute childhood pictures, saying she had never seen such a cute child before, and draped her arm over my shoulder. I was in my mid-20s, and I found myself reacting strongly to my stepmother, showing interest in even my childhood pictures. Embarrassed, I went to the bathroom to calm down. It was a hot summer night, and we had all the windows open because of the heat. I was hot from the soju, and having my young and beautiful stepmother so close to me, looking at the album was too much to bear. As we looked at the album together, my stepmother shed tears, saying what a shame it was for my biological mother to leave the world and leave behind such a good and handsome son. I started to feel different feelings for my stepmother, who was like this. As if reading my heart, my stepmother asked, "Son, do you still only see me as your mother?" I shook my head. My stepmother looked at me intently, and I felt as if she was asking for something. I read her gaze, quickly pulled my stepmother into my arms, and went to my room. We had a great time all night. Until then, I had been a bachelor. I had truly become an adult from a child's level. My stepmother asked if I had never properly dated a woman, to which I shyly nodded. Then I told her that when she came to visit me at the military, I was so taken aback by her beauty that I almost screamed. I hugged my stepmother once again. After making love 3 times, we fell asleep in the same bed. When I felt the urge to use the bathroom in the early morning, my stepmother woke up at the sound. We made love once more. She told me that she had often felt resentful toward my father during their marriage. My stepmother had shared a bed with my father, but the number of times they had been intimate after remarrying could be counted on one hand. My father was always tired, as I had feared, and with lots of work and constant late nights, plus frequent overseas business trips, she felt very lonely as a woman. Now we could freely discuss sex, but back then, how many wives could ask their husbands to be more intimate? After that day, I shared a room with my stepmother. When we were intimate, she asked me to call her by her name. When I would call her Christina, she was overjoyed. At first, I was inexperienced and finished quickly. But as the number of times we were intimate increased, my skills improved. My stepmother told me that I was becoming a real man, and she patted me on the back, saying I was awesome. My father came home after finishing his overseas business trip, and after confirming that he was sound asleep. She came to my room and we made love. Thus, times changed. My stepmother was usually very modest and only knew about housework, but when we were intimate, she was truly active. My father, who was always engrossed in work, has been retired for a while. Unfortunately, my father's health is not as good as it used to be. If his health worsens, he has asked us to send him to a nursing home, instead of struggling to take care of him at home. My stepmother said we should stick together until the end, asking how we could talk about such things given our relationship. I thought to myself that I wouldn't be interested in any other woman, only my stepmother, and I would be with her. When my father goes to heaven, I plan to live with my stepmother.
Found old buddies and went and drank with them. A few girls hit on me, but that was the last thing I wanted. I left in the wee hours on Sunday night to head back home. I wanted to arrive at work on time. When I got there, I had a number of messages from Friday and even a few from Saturday. Kathy must have thought I stayed at the office or something. I called Kathy and asked what she wanted. "We need to talk, Ben. I made the biggest mistake of my life and I truly regret it, but it's done and we have to deal with the consequences." "What's this we shit? There is only you and there is only me. No we. I'm going to divorce you." "Ben, are you going to let me explain?" "Explain what?" "How you been over in front of sex machine and he pulled down your shorts and pumped you. Is that what you want to explain?" "Ben, please, we really need to talk. I talked to mom and dad and they are really mad at me too. I told them the truth, how I fell to temptation and truly regret it, but I need to explain it to you. Am I interested to know how and why you let him screw you?" "No, thank you." "What about the baby, Ben? What if he is yours?" "Look, the marriage is over. You intentionally cheated on me. I can't live with you. If you weren't such a good mother, I would take my kids from you. I'm going to a lawyer tomorrow and find out my rights. I suggest you do the same. I'll stop by Saturday, and we can discuss the future of the kids. I want you to understand you and I no longer have a future together. The kids want to see you, Ben. Take them to your mother's and drop them off. I'll take them to McDonald's or somewhere to eat. I don't want to talk to your mom either. Make sure she understands that. I'll drop the kids off at your house when we are through eating. I picked up my kids like I said I would." I could tell Mary. Kathy's mother wanted to talk to me, but I refused. My kids ran up to me and gave me a big hug and told me how much they missed me. They decided they wanted chicken, so we went to a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant and I let them order whatever they wanted. They asked me when I was coming home, "Kids, you know how some of your friends' mom and dads don't live together and they stay with their mom and visit their dad all the time?" "Yeah, Dad. Mike and Julie have to do that. They say they wish their parents would stay together so they wouldn't have to go back and forth. Mommy and me aren't getting along. I guess she didn't tell you that we are going to be separated. So I'll stop by and see you whenever I can, and some weekends we can do things together. Daddy, we don't want you to leave. We love you. Please stay with us. I can't, but I will always be here for you. You can call me anytime. Annie, you watch over your little brother for me, will you? If he wants to talk to me, then help him reach me. Can you do that for Daddy?" "Yes, Daddy, but you promise to see us all the time?" "I promise." I took them and dropped them off at the house. In the doorway was Kathy watching us. I said goodbye to the kids and drove to my new small apartment. I found one with 2 bedrooms so the kids would have a place to sleep when they were with me. On Saturday, I stopped by Kathy's house. We sat and discussed the kids. She wanted to talk about us, and I finally said, Kathy, I loved you as much as a man could love a woman. You screwed another man. He didn't force you. He didn't force himself upon you. And if he did, you could have called the police. All you had to do is say no, but you didn't. You volunteered your body to him. In my book, that is totally unforgivable. I may be a geek, but I am not an idiot. You made your bed. Now you can sleep in it with whomever you damn well please. She was crying. She knew we weren't going to be together. Now, I'm here to talk about the kids. I will support them. What are you going to do about this new baby? What do you mean, what am I going to do about it? Abort it, have it, and give it up for adoption. Do you plan on keeping it? It might be your child, Ben. Do you want me to abort it? If it's my child, I would treat it like my other 2 kids. If it's not, let his father pay the bill. I want nothing to do with it. It's a baby, Ben. He or she did nothing wrong. I will have it, and if it's not yours, then I won't ask anything of you for it. Fine by me. I'll pay the child support that the court requires and any need that my kids have. My lawyer said I shouldn't get divorced until the baby's father is known. So I will stay married until I find out if I will be supporting 2 or 3 children. I won't live with you during this time. You might want to inform your lover that he might be a father. Kathy didn't know what else to say. She was defeated. I wanted to hurt her, and I know I did. What she didn't know is that I truly loved her and was hurting myself just as much as I was hurting her. I will be back and load up my things in the next week. If I need a court order, I'll get one. Ben, you are welcome here anytime, day or night. You can take whatever you want, whenever you want. Just understand that I know that I made the biggest mistake of my life. I can't undo it. God, how I wish I could. But I can't. I will just have to go on from here. Here's a letter explaining my involvement. I know it won't change anything, but I did need to tell you. And since you won't talk to me about it, you can read it when you find time. I'll always be here for you. Kathy's letter to Ben. Dear Ben, you won't let me tell you the whole story, so I'm writing this letter to try and explain exactly what happened. I know it won't change the way you feel about me, but at least I will know I told you the truth. You are the love of my life. You always have been and always will be. You are the only lover I have ever had. Yes, I had sex with Mr. Macho himself. It wasn't love. It wasn't even enjoyable, thinking back on what it cost me. Mario, the instructor, was big, muscular, and handsome. I guess that's why he gets so many women. Every week he would make passes at me. It felt good knowing other men found me attractive. I knew I was a geek in high school. Every week his passes at me were increased. I should have stopped it a couple of weeks before, but I guess I was too weak a person. On that fatal night, he came on real strong, and like I told you, he had his hands on my hips, but he also pushed his body up against me while I was bent over. It felt good, and I didn't say anything. Later, he asked me if I could stay after class, because he had something he wanted to give me. I knew what he wanted, and I stayed knowing what I was doing, never considering the consequences. When we went back into his office, he didn't even kiss me. He just had me turn around and bend over his desk as he pulled down my shorts. He just started to have sex with me. At that moment, I realized the enormity of the mistake I was making. He didn't even have on a condom. He just pumped and pumped until he was done. There was no love, no affection, no intimacies. There was nothing like you and I shared together. Just raw sex, and not very good at that. When he was done with me, he actually told me thank you. I couldn't believe it. I took a chance on ruining my marriage over this big oaf. I cried when I got to the car. Even though you didn't know about it, I wanted to make it up to you. I asked you if you wanted another woman. So, that's why I asked you. I wanted you to get even with me for what I had done. I had no intention of ever screwing another man again. I mentioned it so you could get even with me. Then you told me about true love and the love we have together. It made me cry that I had done this to you. I couldn't tell you after what you said about leaving me. I hoped you would never find out and I would just keep it a secret. Then I found out I was pregnant. I had to tell you then. I felt I had no choice. You see, Mario, the instructor, is of dark complexion. He's Mexican or Puerto Rican or something like that. So, if the baby was of a darker complexion, you would have known right off the bat. I couldn't go on trying to fool you for 9 months hoping the baby was yours. I love you too much to do that. After that argument we had, you didn't touch me for over a week, so I figured the baby probably isn't yours. I will love you forever and will always be here if you ever decide to forgive me. Your loving wife, Kathy. Life went on for the next 7 months. I paid child support but no alimony. I saw my kids a couple of times a week and took them somewhere every other weekend. Kathy started watching other kids on a daycare basis to earn extra cash. I did pay for my kids' needs. They weren't going to go without. If Kathy said they needed something, I made sure they got it. When it was time for the birth of the baby, I wasn't there. Kathy's mom and dad were there for the delivery. You see, for my 2 kids, I held her hand and cut the cord. Not this time. I just waited for a phone call to see if the baby was mine. I left a copy of my DNA with her doctor. They said they wouldn't know for a couple of days. So the day after the delivery, I stopped by the hospital to see Kathy. I even took her flowers. I don't know why I did that. Inside, I still loved her but hated what she had done to our lives. She looked at me when I walked in. She gave me a faint smile, and I asked her if she heard anything yet. No, they're supposed to run the test today. Ben, I love you and want you to know that I will never marry another man. Why are you telling me this? Do you know something? The baby is dark. I'm sure you're not the father. I had tears in my eyes. I wanted to be the father. I really did. I just got up and left the hospital. The doctor called me with the results the following day. I wasn't the father. I went to the lawyer and started divorce proceedings. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I knew this was cutting the ties with the only woman I have ever loved. As far as Mario is concerned, he left for Mexico the day he heard Kathy was pregnant. I'm now waiting for the divorce to become final. That will definitely be the worst day of my life. Cheating has big consequences. It not only hurts the person cheated on, but also the kids, parents, in-laws, other family members, and friends. Nobody wins, everyone loses. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hello, please like and subscribe. Ever since I entered university, I've lived in the same area. Then, when COVID-19 broke out, the company's situation became difficult, and I was reluctantly placed in a position to manage a local factory. They paid me more than when I was in Sil and Gyeonggi province. I have a car, and I go straight home after work on weekdays. I came down to the local factory with a happy heart, thinking that I would just think of it as dead for a few years and earn some money. The city was smaller than I thought. So after I walked around downtown for about a week, it seemed like the news that I had come down had spread. The people who had been working at the existing factory helped me adapt quickly by having gatherings and frequent company dinners, so I was really comfortable. At first, I stayed in a dormitory, but I am a tidy person, so it was difficult for me to live with others. I couldn't even fill a month and moved to a separate house for rent. Having lived in the city for a long time, it was awkward for the local people to show interest or meddling, to put it nicely or rudely. My administrative supervisor advised me to go around and greet the local residents on the day of the move. I hurried to the local rice cake shop, wrapped up some white rice cake in a hurry, divided it into plates, and when I came back after greeting them, I was exhausted. There weren't many houses where young people like me live alone, and most of them seemed to be family homes. I guess I had a prejudice against rural cities. The surrounding houses all seemed to have a lot of leisure, and the ladies who came out to receive the rice cakes looked no more than the late 40s at most. I heard later that there are many factories around, so everyone's financial situation is not bad. They all got married and settled in this city. And I heard that many of the wives came down after learning as much as they could in the city. Even then, I just had useless thoughts like, what if I have to live here for the rest of my life? How do I meet my partner? Then, a long vacation of 12 weeks was given due to the factory line renovation. The factory family said they were going somewhere for a long-awaited vacation. I stayed at home because all my friends are office workers and there was no one to meet. Even if I went up to Seoul, I watched the dramas that had piled up and played games, spending time without anything special. Sometimes when I ran out of food, I went to the mart in front of my house and ordered some of the few delivery foods. But when I wasted half of my vacation, someone rang our house bell. I didn't order delivery, and there was no one to come. so I picked up the intercom. It was a woman's voice, but since it's an old house, it didn't show her face, so I hung up and went out to open the gate. After dinner, I felt that I should return the pot. So I diligently washed the dishes and headed back to the neighbor's house. But she was alone. I hesitated to leave, but she invited me in and suggested I bring some fruit. I was wondering if that would be appropriate, but she grabbed my wrist and closed the door. We sat down and chatted about various things, and I was surprised to learn that she was much older than I had thought. She looked to be in her late 40s, but she had been in her 50s for quite some time. While I was eating fruit and thinking about how well she had maintained herself, she began to inquire about me, questions about my age, why I moved here, whether I had a girlfriend, etc. I thought she was just curious. I was also hoping that I might be introduced to someone nice. I had several interactions like this with the neighboring households. The husbands often worked in shifts at the factory, and they often stayed in the dormitory for night shifts because it was bothersome to come home. During my vacation, I had many meals at different houses and quickly became close with them. From then on, we quickly became closer, calling each other by nicknames like older sister and brother. One day, the neighbor who first visited me invited me over for dinner. To be honest, I was happy to save on food expenses and eat delicious home-cooked meals, so I never really declined. That day, I was in a particularly good mood and the food was delicious, so I had a drink. I was worried about what would happen if her husband came in, but I was relieved to hear that he was on a night shift. As we had a few drinks, the conversation got more intense. Especially, she started talking about why she was not satisfied with her married life after marrying at a young age. Even though I'm a man, I could understand why she felt that way. I was just listening and drinking when she suddenly sat down next to me. I felt uneasy, but whether it was due to the alcohol I had consumed or the thoughts that were passing through my mind, my heart started to beat faster. I didn't think I was showing it, but she laughed and said I was cute. I laughed awkwardly, and she said she was hot and took off her outer clothes. It wasn't like she was in her underwear, but she was wearing a sleeveless dress that hinted at her silhouette. Visually, I couldn't help but keep my eyes on her, which was embarrassing. What's going on now? Is what I'm thinking about to happen? All sorts of imaginations filled my head. She must have seen my face turn red because she looked at me and kissed my cheek. Yes, as you might imagine, what happened next? I was somewhat anxious, so I went home with her and spent the night there. I was suffering from a hangover after a long time, and I couldn't see my neighbor. We were not in a relationship where we exchanged contact information, and I felt awkward going to her house first, so I just went to work that day. Days passed without any significant changes. I just went to work, came home, played games, slept, and woke up. A repetitive daily routine. In fact, within those days, I was sometimes scared that someone might find out about the relationship we had, or that the neighbor's husband might come looking for me. But none of that happened, and somewhat boring days passed by. I settled into my position as a factory manager and got very close with the people in the neighborhood. I became a bit awkward with one person, the neighbor. Feeling that this couldn't continue, I rang her doorbell again. She came out with a surprised look on her face. I asked if her husband was home, and she said no and invited me in. Sitting awkwardly in the living room, I was the first to speak. I said, Let's be comfortable with each other as before. Let's forget everything. Let's pretend it never happened. But the response was surprising. She didn't want to just remain as the person living next door. She said she wanted to spend quality time together from time to time. At first, I said, "What if we get caught? I can't handle it." But she reassured me that it wouldn't happen. She said her husband had never been interested in domestic affairs for a long time, and he regularly changed his partners. Perhaps I didn't really hate her offer, so I said I would think about it. After a few days of thinking, I couldn't come up with an answer, and had no choice but to accept her offer. No, it felt like a fun part of my boring life in a foreign town. As we continued this lifestyle for several months, I found that human morality standards can be lowered. I even became bold, not caring much about the eyes of the neighborhood. When someone said, "You two seem close these days," I could easily pass it off by saying, "She has been good to me since I first moved in, so I depend on her a lot." Then, someone found out about our relationship. We were having a good time as usual, but the landlady who had rented us the house came to visit. It was a very hot time of the year, and I had forgotten that she was coming to check on the broken air conditioner. The structure of the house was such that the master bedroom could be seen as soon as the front door was opened, and that day, as if someone was asking to be seen, I hadn't even drawn the curtains. Seeing the scene, the landlady quickly left. Not knowing what to do, I was flustered, but soon she contacted me. She asked to contact her when I had time. I immediately called her and told her she could come to the house. The excitement was completely gone, knowing that someone had found out, and my neighbor quickly returned home. It seemed difficult to identify the problem right away, so she said she would call a technician. I thanked her and was about to send her off, but she asked to have a separate conversation. I was trembling with fear, wondering if she had noticed that I was involved with the woman next door and what she might say. I brought her into the house and waited for her to speak, but she told a very unexpected story. Actually, anyone who should know about our relationship already does. Of course, many husbands don't notice because their daily routine is to come home, eat, go to work, drink, and return home. But the neighborhood women who scrutinize everything that happens in the neighborhood are different, she said. Honestly, until now, I thought I would be severely scolded and hear harsh words. However, what she said was that she had been watching me all along. Until now, there had been no opportunity to say that. I wanted to have such a relationship, and I thought it was not possible, but seeing it today, it seemed unnecessary. This was the first time she had spoken so openly, and the first time she had imagined having such a relationship. She couldn't look me in the eye and was sweating, and honestly, I felt strange. I didn't say anything and just listened. But then she came over to me sitting on the sofa and sat on my thigh. It was a bit surprising, but on the other hand, I was wondering what was going on and was flustered, so I just did as my body told me. Almost half a year had passed, and I hadn't been able to meet a woman, and constantly repeating the same routine made me easily fall for even the smallest stimulation. It may sound like an excuse, but I really didn't intend to have a relationship. But the situation went strangely. It was also the first time in my life that I had met someone in this way and had a bed. From then on, the woman next door and the landlady became even more bold. They would sneak in and open the door while I was sleeping, or asked me who was better as if they were competing. Every time, I didn't give a definite answer. But they even liked that. Even though I was not proactive, there was never a big complaint. In the end, it seems that most of the neighborhood women knew about my delicate relationship with the two of them. There were many days when I felt that more people were giving me subtle glances or asking me for a drink. However, I didn't want to continue this relationship any longer. The attention from the two of them was enough, and my life was no longer boring. The problem is, not long ago, the wife of the foreman I was close with called me out separately. She asked whether there was anyone in the neighborhood who didn't know about these relationships and what I was going to do about it. The atmosphere was unusual, and I had a feeling of my heart sinking, thinking she might even tell the foreman. I immediately kneeled down and asked her what she wanted me to do. If she told me to leave the factory immediately, I was ready to do so. But then, as if it's no big deal, she told me to stop by her house sometimes. While I was bewildered, she said there's nothing difficult about it, that I just need to eat something delicious with her and spend some time. So far, there was my will in these relationships. Both the woman next door and the landlady approached me first, but not pushing them away was also a way of expressing my feelings. But the threat, not a threat, from the foreman's wife is different. It's not about whether I like it or not, but the anxiety has grown so much that I don't know whether to follow it or not. And it feels like my head is going to explode. Even if I follow her, I'm worried about what would happen if I get caught or receive a stronger threat. I'm anxious about leaving right now because I think there will be many people who would suspect or hold a grudge. Of course, I know well that my actions so far were also wrong. I am deeply repenting, and if I have to pay for it, I will. I can even go to the foreman's wife's house with my eyes closed. It's not that I dislike her as a woman, but the situation has led to this, and I'm worried. What should I do now? I thought I had been living hard in my own way, but I never dreamed that something like this would happen. I couldn't even imagine that I could be threatened to increase these strange relationships. You might think of it as a provocative story, but I need wisdom on how to cut off all relationships, how I can go back to my daily life.